Hi, I'm Phil Bainbridge, and this is a quick demo video for the blog post to check a comma separated email address is valid. So there's details about what the actual regular expression that you're going to see does when we break it down here. But what we're specifically looking at is how to correctly format an email address. It's not going to confirm if it's a valid email address at this point, but that it's formatted in a way that we want to accept. In the Google Sheet file itself, I've just got a cell slap bang in the middle here that we're going to use to demo this with. So I'm going to type two email addresses in, example1@gmail.com, and I'm going to separate them via a comma and then a space, because this is the correct format that I want somebody to use. So they're entered there like so. To get to the app script, if you go to extensions and app script, you will see the code now available here. So here we've got that regular expression, which you'll see on the page itself when it's posted. It'll break down what each item in here does so you can understand it more. We're just getting our Google Sheet here, and we're specifically getting the cell that has those email addresses in. We're then using a JavaScript split to separate them via a comma and a space so that we can loop through them as an array here in our for loop. So what we ultimately then do is we break it down by getting a single email address and we log that. We then perform a match and we test that email address against our regular expression. If it comes back as a positive or as true, then we're just going to log something here to say it's a valid email address. If it doesn't come back as a match, it'll come back as something like null. And so our if will fail and it will jump into the else instead. At this point, then, we're going to log that it's an invalid email address format. And then here, we're just going to launch a little pop-up message in the Google Sheet just to kind of further emphasize that. Again, the principle here is it's a bit of a validation function to help with a larger system to make sure that people aren't entering email addresses incorrectly before you then use it elsewhere in your script. And inevitably, if they do enter an incorrectly formatted email address, we want to break out of that loop because we want to stop looping through the rest of the email addresses so that we can highlight the one that is wrong to the person. So I'm going to run this now. And I've done it correctly to start with because I just want to show you what it looks like when it's a success first off. So to run this, we're going to go into the AppScript editor and click the Run button. So as you can see, it's picking up the cell itself with the email addresses in. That's just to confirm you're typing in the right cell. It pulls out the first email address. And then in this instance, it's valid. So it loops onto the next one. And that one is valid as well. Let's see what it looks like if we break it a couple of times then. So if I go back to my Google Sheet here, the common mistake people tend to make is they don't do the comma and space separation. So it's going to cause us a problem when we want to do the split here via comma and space. It's not going to be successful. So let's run this again. What we can see in the login then is it just pulls that cell. We might spot here, but the user never would because they're not going to see these logs, that there's no space in there. So this time it pulls them both through thinking they're one email address because it can't separate them correctly. So it says this is an invalid format. If we go to the Google Sheet, that pop-up that we've mentioned has now been displayed here. And again, we can customize the message that we've typed in here, but it's suggesting the person has a double check of what they've typed in. So in that case, I'll hopefully go in and correct it and run it again. Let's break it in a different way so that the format doesn't match the email address format that we've specified. So I'm going to get rid of the full stop here in the first email address. So it's not going to be valid to our regular expression that we have here. So let's run it again. It gets the email address cell. It goes to the first email address and it suddenly tests it and says it's not valid. So again, if we go to our Google Sheet, this time we're saying there's a problem with the email address, and hopefully the user at this point can realize that they've just missed the full stop. So as I say, it's just a really useful function to help test the format of an email address if you're wanting to then use these to maybe bulk add file permissions, for instance, or send emails. Thank you very much.